Okay, everybody, good morning. As some more of you start rolling in, I will start here with our little introduction here. So I'm Dan from Pure Lighting Company. We are an engineer, design, and co-op approved dealer headquartered here in New Jersey. We've been working with schools primarily throughout the state. You may have worked with my brother in the past, or you're working with us right now. So we're happy to go and provide some information here about what we see being the future of schools, and in this case, the future of school buses and public transportation. Before I go and introduce the speaker for today's webinar, just a few pieces of PSA. First off, email us at info@purelighting.com with any additional questions, including pricing or anything that wasn't covered in this webinar. There will be a Q&A time, but sometimes the important questions come up after the webinar is over. A recording of this webinar will be made available on a per request basis. So if you do want a copy, please send us an email, info@pure-lighting.com. I'll put that in the chat box and we'll provide you the recording to share with your colleagues. And then finally, if you do have any questions now or during the webinar, please put the questions in the Q&A module built in here in Zoom. Please don't use the chat menu. With the Q&A module, we do get the questions recorded and who asked the questions, meaning that we can do a follow-up if there's more information to provide you. That said, I'm happy to introduce Dan Filmworth from Luminaire. Dan has a BS in mechanical engineering, 30 years in commercial air conditioning prior to focusing on cleaning air and transportation. And his company, Luminaire, is at the vanguard of developing technologies to create safer transportation. Their work has been really quite amazing. We've been really quite excited to partner with them. And I think that you'll find the information Dan has to present today quite fascinating. All right, well, I'll turn over to Dan. If you could unmute, Dan.
Okay. Everyone hear me okay? All good, Dan? Yes, it's great to be working with Pure Lighting and what they're bringing to the school market. And I want to appreciate and thank them for allowing me the time to spend with you just to share what we're doing in school buses. So let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll take you through this. I should get access to that. All good? Okay. We like to bring the latest information. So I'm going to go through this. It won't take but 15 minutes or so, maybe 20 minutes to take you through this. But I want to take you through what the latest information we have, because it keeps evolving and we keep learning. This is from February 9th, just last week. Centers for Disease Control, CDC, updated their ventilation in buildings. And in that, they let us know that the virus can stay in the air for quite a while, actually for hours, or they say even for days. They also point out that what we want to do is we want to remove these particles from the air. And one way to do that is with improving filtration. Another way of doing that, of course, is using ultraviolet germicidal irradiation as a supplement to help inactivate SARS-CoV-2. Earlier this month, there was a U.S. hearing on COVID and transportation. The testimony from their technical expert, William Banfleth, PhD, PE, from Penn State University, who's also the chair of the ASHRAE's Epidemic Task Force. And I just pull out a few comments from his testimony. In that he pointed out that the perceived importance of fomite transmission, and that's the transmission when you touch surfaces and then bring that to yourself. That has just decreased over time. And if you think about it, at the beginning, we would take our groceries and we would throw away the cereal box, but keep the bag. And we were all concerned about the surface transmission. It's turned out that that's really not a significant mode of transmission. More like what the CDC said is that we're concerned about the infectious pathogens that are lingering in the air. So droplet transmission is what ASHRAE is focused on. And then I just want to call out your importance to transportation, especially because there's a higher density of people in transportation than there are in buildings. And with that increased density, we have an increased risk of transmission of disease. So again, like the CDC, let's improve ventilation, let's improve filtration, the code minimum ventilation, or at least from an outside air percentage standpoint, and then at least MERV 13 filters are better. Also, air cleaners can be used to supplement the ventilation and filtration. As far as air cleaners goes, it was pointed out that there are many technologies available, many for which there's evidence for efficacy and safety is lacking. But most importantly, the best established technology currently is disinfection with germicidal ultraviolet light. So with that as a background on what's some recent news, let me also tell you some maybe not so good news that we understand that, some way or another, this virus is going to live with us in some form forever. Maybe it's going to go from a pandemic to an endemic, but the virus is likely to stay after crisis fades. But with any crisis, we kind of take an evaluation of ourselves and what's going on. And I think some things that have been highlighted for us is that, maybe there's some things we can improve. We don't have to accept that we have such a high amount of people that typically die of the flu each year. We don't have to accept the fact that 1 in 6 students miss over 15 days of school in a typical year. And we certainly don't want to be in a position in the future where we have to, or currently even, where we have parents working from home while overseeing children who are also doing remote learning. So certainly the spotlight is on health and air quality. We have an aging structure in schools. If you just look in the news, anytime you can find something about air quality classrooms and posing either questions of safety or opening schools. And as we think about the school, we have to understand that the school bus is part of the school system. In fact, it's what connects us between the school and the home. It's also the most densely populated part of a school facility. It's difficult to supervise mask wearing. Also happens to be the last place a student most likely is on school property before coming home. So I just want to have people understand that as we're looking at cleaning up air in school, it would be hard to argue that a different area of the school should come in front of the school bus as far as cleaning air. Certainly, we hope that the nurse's office and the chem lab already have some type of ventilation. So again, back to the surfaces versus airborne. There's a lot of information saying that instead of cleaning surfaces, spending so much time on that, maybe we should be cleaning the air. And again, pointing out that the best way to do that is with ultraviolet germicidal irradiation. But what do we continue to see on school bus? It's just focus on surface disinfection, the fomite transmission. We've not addressed the control of airborne pathogens. The good news is that in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, there was $54 billion for K-12 schools. And by now, the school systems in New Jersey and where our audience is from here should know the amount that's coming to each school system. And thoughts are that there's going to be another amount, possibly 1.9 trillion in total stimulus, which may mean 170 billion additional for schools. Certainly some of the things that can be used for that, they're supposed to be used for one-time expenditures. And there's a lot of words on the screen there, but certainly indoor air quality in school facilities is included. And let me just jump back a slide. And that does include the bus ventilation system as well. That's the good news. So what is UVGI that we've referenced a few times? Well, it dates back, it's got a long history. It dates back to 1937, fighting measles in Philadelphia schools, another contagious respiratory disease. UVC at 254 nanometers has a very high germicidal effect, and it works by disrupting DNA and RNA of microorganisms. What's nice about that is it's still going to work on in some form or another against a mutation or a strain that comes from the UK or South Africa or Brazil or wherever the next strain comes from. UV dose is UV energy times time. And we'll see later that we've done airflow tests on our bus, so we know the time, and certainly we know the UV energy. So with that, we can come up with the UV dose. And we are far enough along in this pandemic to have an agreed upon dose for killing SARS-CoV-2. And since it's been around since 1937, there are hundreds of pathogens, including influenza, different rhinoviruses, different bacterias, for which UVC is effective. And so we know the dose. Let's think about a school bus. A school bus is an ideal environment for UVGI. If I was going to do a load design on a bus, the first thing I would notice is a high density of people. I'd also notice that there's a lot of glass. So I've got a skin load, I've got a lot of high internal load, and I'm moving down the road at maybe 30 to 40 miles an hour. So I've got a high amount of airflow in a bus application. I just want to point that out, that the air throughout a bus could be approximately 10 times that of an office setting. So there's a lot of air movement, which is good if the air is clean and not so good if it's not clean. So what do we do with Lumen 19? Well, first tell you what we don't do. We don't put anything in the air that people breathe or shine anything on somebody that claims to be deadly from viruses and bacteria. So we don't create ozone. We don't create vaporized hydrogen peroxide. We don't shine germicidal light on people. We don't create ions. We don't use pesticides. I just point that out because there are some technologies out there, and one that can sometimes get confused with UV. It uses UV, photohydroionization, uses UV, but not in a germicidal way. It uses UV on a multi-metal surface to create a gas, the gases that have oxidizing properties. So it creates hydroxyl radicals, ozone, hydrogen peroxide, and then puts that out into the air that people breathe in order to inactivate viruses and kill bacteria. We kind of follow a simple flow chart that, if the process destroys cells, if it doesn't destroy cells, then we're not going to use it to kill viruses and bacteria, obviously. If it does kill bacteria and inactivate viruses, we're not going to let it be on people or in the air that people breathe. So let's look at a simple retrofit. This is a bus that has air conditioning. I'll show you a system without air conditioning, but this is a bulkhead evaporator in the front and back of the bus. We simply take an enclosure that contains a high amount of UVC. We now also include a MERV 13 filter. And so as the air comes into the enclosure, it sees a high dose of UVC, and then it's distributed back into to the bus. The air conditioning, the compressors don't have to be on. It can be in vent mode during the winter. So we're just circulating as the air is circulating through the bus. The air is seeing a high dose of UVC before it's then distributed back in for the occupants. If you have a bus without air conditioning, we have a model that we just add. Basically, it's the same fan assembly that you would have in an air-conditioned bus. So it's a smaller version, what that looks like. But again, the same process. As air comes into the enclosure, it sees a high dose of UVC before the air is then distributed back into the bus. This is what that would look like. This is actually the bus that I'm in. I'm on my way down to do a presentation in person at a school system in Florida. So let me show you another picture from the side. We've been requested to add padding, so we can add padding if that's necessary. This particular bus I'm on has a system in the back as well. So it just is bus dependent a bit. I just want to touch for a minute on why ASHRAE recommends at least MERV 13 filters. If you look at the distribution of the particle sizes in a typical human cough, and then you look at how effective a MERV 13 filter is, you're going to get 87% effective across those size ranges on removing those particles. And the way that works is with our filter is, I'm not going to show the video, but basically particles are polarized. And so we've got, the fibers are polarized, which attracts and pulls. It's like a magnet almost, pulls the particles out of the air. I can show that later, maybe get you to a link if you'd like to see some more about that. The nice thing about MERV 13 filters and why they're recommended is that they capture pollens and small particles that deal with asthma and allergies. Our particular filter has a low pressure drop. We had an independent airflow test on our bus that showed basically it was 1,302 CFM with the MERV 13 filter. The standard bus filter, which is probably MERV 2 actually, was 1,297. So in other words, virtually the same airflow. And then the dust holding capacity on this filter, because of the way it loads, is several times that of standard bus filter, which that means that your duration between filter changes is extended. As far as clean air delivery rate, this is important not only for particulate filtration, but also for UV. It's really, how effective not only has to do with the efficiency, but how much are we cleaning? So if we just had a single UV bulb and we made the claim that, whatever comes close to that UV bulb, 95% of it's inactivated. Well, that doesn't mean we're inactivating 95% of what's ever in our space we're trying to. So it's clean air delivery rate is a way of relating not only the efficiency of the cleaning device, but also how much you're cleaning. So in a filtration example, if we had a HEPA filter that was almost 100% efficient, but is cleaning 400 CFM, we'd have 400 CFM of clean air. If we had a MERV 13 filter at 1,300 CFM and it was 87%, the effectiveness would be almost 3 times that of the HEPA. Just wanted to point out that we're not doing anything to surface level contamination. It would have to wait until those larger particles that are on surface would become aerosolized. But whatever's aerosolized that gets into the enclosure is what we're cleaning. So anything from person to person, sitting next to each other, it's not going to do anything with that. It's going to deal with whatever gets into the enclosure to see the UV that we're going to activate. So what are the results of that? Well, again, UV dose is UV power times time. So from a worst case standpoint, let's just say we're going to have a full size bus and just put one system on the bus. Since we know the UV power and time, and we relate that to a goal or a dose of 3,700 microjoules per centimeter squared for SARS-CoV-2, that gives us a calculated 99.9% removal in 7 minutes or less with the UV. From a maintenance standpoint, the bulb life is guaranteed for 17,000 hours with less than a 20% drop in output. So for a school bus, that could be the life of the school bus potentially. The school system I'm going to see now, so they don't have any buses with greater than 10,000 hours on them. You think about it, 4 hours a day, 180 days for a school year. So it could last the life of the bus potentially. The nice thing is that we want to help disperse information to the parents, teachers, drivers about the investments that you make and promote it, help you with that. The great thing is, as the public, you're not going to have pushback from the public. They're aware of UV effectiveness. They're aware that UV works. Some other technologies you may have to, basically we didn't want to be in the business of trying to promote new technology. We want to take what was safe, proven, and effective and use that. We do see across the country that attracting and retaining bus drivers is very difficult. And so a lot of the school systems are wanting to do this not only to obviously keep people safe, but also to help attract and retain school bus drivers. So just to sum up, respiratory diseases like SARS-CoV-2 are primarily spread through the air. UV is well known to be safe and proven to inactivate viruses. We keep all of our UVC in an enclosure. We don't let it be exposed on passengers or materials. And then finally, I want to let you know that we install it, commission it. So if you had a school system that wanted to do a certain number of buses, we would come in and we would do the installation, make sure it's put in right, commission it, and make sure it goes in correctly. We'd be happy to have bus maintenance people stay with us and see what we're doing, because it's fairly easy to take this from one system to another. Not going to touch on the solar part. I'll just stop sharing and see if there's any questions.
All right, everyone. So there's already a few questions that are in. If you have additional ones, please, again, use that Q&A module. So I'll be Havana White here asking the questions. So first off, Dan, can you talk about some of the applications? So where has this been implemented around the country?
So we have different trials going on, different pilots. We have the bus that I'm on is a Type C bus, and it's a demo bus. We have a bus that was a Type A bus. It was used in Orange County Public Schools to take students in a alternative learning session. That bus is now up in Indiana. It's taking Indiana state legislators from the hotel they're staying in to the State House. But it's really been, I'd say, since the maybe a couple weeks ago that all of the seeds that we've been planting have been coming to roost with, you need two things. You need not only a need, you need funding. And so what we're seeing now is a huge amount of gosh, we probably quoted 13 or $14 million worth of installations last week. So it's, I can point to pilots and so on, but not many that have put it in yet.
Great. And so on that side there, excuse me, guys, we go a little out of order to keep the conversation a little fluid here. The upcoming American Relief Fund, will that be applicable for the school buses?
Well, we would hope so. Certainly, it was included in the Consolidated Appropriations Act, and from what I read in the paper, there's continued education and air quality. We've got an aging infrastructure, and when people make the connection that the school bus is part of the school system and it's the most densely populated part, that's what drives people to say, yeah, we should do something. It's almost like it's always been an afterthought. It's not directly tied to test scores and so on. So it's nice to see that the school bus is getting the attention it deserves.
And then I'll just say a couple things on that. So from my reading so far, $20 billion nationwide is going to public transport agencies. So it's not school buses. And there is about, I believe the number is 170 billion going to educational, with 130 going to K-12, with the idea of implementations to battle COVID and get kids back in school. So this definitely, at least to me, looks like it should be applicable. So next question here is, what is an estimated cost of this product, and how many would you be looking at per bus for some of the common bus types?
Well, let me answer the first one, the last question first, and that'll maybe help with the first one. I would say, so on low speed, so if you take a typical system, like, I don't know if you can see in the back there. This is not a background screen. This is actually, I'm on the bus. System in the back. On low speed, we're getting 27 air changes per hour. On high speed, we're getting excess of 52 air changes per hour. So that means even with just one system on, that you're seeing the air at least every 2 minutes passing through there. So it depends on your level of how far you want to go. But certainly if you're doing 27 air changes per hour and that air is seeing a high dose of UVC, you're going to make a big improvement in the quality of the air. So we'd say one system would be required, and then there's a lot of factors. Is it a heating only bus? Is it so we have to add? But for a ballpark rule of thumb, I would say $5,500 installed, commission, done, turnover per bus.
And that's, as you mentioned before, very likely going to last for the lifetime of the bus, right? On that side, is there any extra maintenance that needs to be done on an annual or more regular basis?
So if you have air conditioning already in your bus, then you're familiar with changing out. And I've actually got one here, washing or cleaning out the filters that are on the bus. So you should get twice the life out of the MERV 13 filter. You don't have to put that MERV 13 filter in, but we recommend it. You get twice that, and the media pads are $13 or $14. So it's not that big of an expense. Other than that, there's no additional maintenance, just typical maintenance that you have in cleaning filters.
And then a question here, is that $5,500, is that per bus or per unit?
Well, it's not per unit. I'm sorry, it's per bus, assuming you have one unit. Your installation, your cost if you were going to do a second one on the same bus will not be the full $5,500. It's less than that. So it's if you have specifics, if you have a fleet and you want to look at it, we could give you a specific quote, I think. And that's the important thing that we should be doing right now with the money coming available and with school systems trying to figure out how they're going to allocate that money and where they should spend it. We're happy to provide work with Pure Lighting on giving you guys a specific quote so you have something to bring to your school system.
Yeah, so on that side, in some of the reading that I've been having with the American Relief Fund, one of President Biden's goals is to get K-8 schools open within 100 days. And so it's going to be rapid deployment of that funding. So exactly echoing Dan's point, that the idea there is getting the quotes now, understanding your plan now, so when the funding arrives, you can execute. And so if you have any questions, just email us or put your email in the Q&A, and we'll send you an email to get that conversation started. So I have one more question and then one request. So the last question is it's a two-parter. Is there any training required, and does the system need to be turned on and off like an air conditioning unit?
As far as training, it's really just an education standpoint, so that, like I'm sure, Dan, when you install a UVC system in, we love going in with our meter. We love showing people that it's working, and most importantly, showing them where the UV is not. It's not on people. So we go through that training with people when we're doing one of our UV systems as well. So the training is more of an education. And then as far as what was the second part?
Do you have to turn the system on and off, or is it just running when the engine's on?
Yeah. So whatever's in the enclosure will see a high amount of UVC. So in order for it to work, you need to pull air through it. So the fan has to be in a vent mode, and for it to pull air through the bus. So that is part of the training, is to understand. And there's a I can't show it to you on this bus, but there is a blue. Basically, our logo lights up blue, so you can see that there's UVC in the enclosure. But you do have to have the fan moving to pull air across it.
Awesome. I like that idea right there with the indicator. So we might have to, let's say, borrow that idea for our whole room systems. All right, and then last point, it's a request, and you mentioned a video that you could provide a link for. If you could just send me that link, and then I'll forward it to everyone that's been on the webinar.
Okay. Any questions that come up afterwards, I'm sure Daniel will get them to me.
Yep, of course. All right, everyone, I thank you all for attending. Dan, thanks for your time. I know you have a meeting in 30 minutes, so I hope you can get that bus to its destination safely. All All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day, and thanks for attending.